Okay, so this is the lab that we have set up for the Microsoft VDI using Windows 2008 R2. Um, our lab comprises of three distinct servers. One of the servers we are using Hyper-V, and we are using a Windows 7 client, which is we call it Calidco-client. We're using the remote desktop gateway. Remote desktop gateway function of the remote desktop gateway is to create a connection authorization policy that who can connect to this network, and the resource authorization policy that what kind of resources and computers the users can connect to. Um, we have remote desktop web access. This function of this server is to present the users with a login web page. Once the user logs into the page, they will be presented based on the policy with the web page that contains icons representing individual applications, or as well as the icons that it could represent a desktop. Then we have the remote desktop connection broker. This is a new function in Windows 2008 R2, and the purpose of the remote desktop connection broker is that to keep track of users connections to the backend session. So if the users is connected to a terminal session, and then they for somehow they get disconnected, the second time they come in, remote desktop connection to make sure that the user gets attached to the exact same session and is not going to let the user to start a brand new session. And then also the remote desktop connection broker is another function that allows the load to be distributed. So if you have a same applications is published for hundreds of users, and then it makes sure that that application gets distributed evenly in the remote application farm, session host farm, and takes care of the load balancing. And then also the another function of the remote desktop connection broker is to allow users to access the virtual host servers and the pool of virtual machine, either in the pool or a personalized virtual machine. Then the remote desktop session host. Remote desktop session host is in our environment we have set up two. One of them we've defined it as a redirector. The reason for a session host to be defined as a redirector is because if you're using virtual machine pool and personalized VM and a Hyper-V, then a redirector is a requirement. And then once you have a session host defined as a redirector, you cannot publish an application. So we have created a secondary server, a remote desktop session host, and that's where we have published the application. And then on to the right, we have our virtual host servers, which is the Hyper-V function. That's a completely independent server. Then it's basically we've created a pool of virtual machines. That virtual machine gets delivered to the user. It's no particular order. It's like this is for the group, that everybody in a group they're using the exact same image and then the same application. So that this is how that's the purpose of the VM pool. And a personalized if a user has to have access to the same virtual machine running on the Hyper-V all the time. And that's how it is also resides on this server. And then here we've showed we have a medv and appv server. The medv and appv server, we've added them in because we want to demonstrate that yes, we are serving a Windows 7 sessions to the requesters, but at the same time we are able to inject a legacy-based application, i.e. 6 in our case, into the VM pool, merge it into this, and then have that gets delivered to the requester user. So with that said, and obviously there's a domain controller. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and go to the servers. Here's the one of our first servers, and then it basically has our domain controller, our the client PC. Then we have two session remote desk session hosts. One of them is for the redirector, and then we have the web access, then we have a connection broker and a remote desktop gateway. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and start the client, which is a Windows 7. And then let me go ahead and show what is going on the second server. On the second server, the VDP1 client and VDP2 client, these are the two clients that are defined in a virtual machine pool residing on this server, Hyper-V RDVHSRV server. And then we have another client here, which is the PVD1 client, and that is a dedicated machine that it gets assigned to the user. Then we have a RD app SRV. This is our second session host that it resides on a second server, and this is where the application is coming. So VDP1 and VDP2, with that said, as you see, both of their the state, they're off and not running. So I'm going to go to the client, and with the Microsoft VDI, once the applications are published, those applications, they actually show up in a start menu, just like what I'm showing here in this demo. So basically, it's just going and remote application. So if I click on calculator, the calculator in our case, it resides on the RD app SRV, which resides on this machine, and then basically clicking on it, this application from here, it gets delivered to their users. This client, client. So I'm going to go ahead and put my, and there's our application. Now, here I'm going to go to command prompt, and on this Windows client, I'm just going to type my IP address. As you see, it's 192.168.1.23. I'm going to go and I have a command.exe. This command.exe is actually coming from a different server. This is actually coming from this server gets delivered. And then I could show you by, if I go ahead and request, as you see, the IP address that is on this command prompt is different than the IP address of this, because this command prompt came from, it's a virtual command prompt, it came from a different server. Now, what happens if I go ahead and request a virtual machine? As soon as I click on Calidco virtual desktop pool, as soon as I request this, what it's going to do is going to, the request is going to come to the Hyper-V, and it's going to wake one of these two up. Depends which one is busy and which one is not. So let me just see what happens. But as soon as I click OK, as you see, the status got changed to running. And then obviously the environment, the OS has to get started, it has to come up, and then before it gets delivered into the to the client. So this process, it may take a little while, because by the time it wakes up the session and the operating system is fully up and functioning, and then everything gets delivered, it's going to take a few seconds. So while that is running, I could just take this time to show and then I'm going to get back to this remote desktop so you could see the full session is up and running. I'm going to go ahead and look at the remote desktop web access. Remote desktop web access is as I explained earlier, it presents the user with a web page, and the web page, the users are can put their login, and depending on their authorization and access, they're going to be presented with icons. So let's just go ahead and go ahead to that web page. The reason that I'm getting a certification error because these are self-generated certificates, and if they were not, then you would have seen something different. So I'm going to go ahead and put my login information. And then as soon as I do that, I again the same set of applications are accessible to the user. Again, clicking on it, I'm going to go ahead and we'll be presented with a calculator, or I could go ahead and connect to the Word viewer and the Microsoft Word viewer from the application. Here's the Word viewer that it gets delivered to the desktop. Now, it is possible to not use the remote desktop gateway and just go from a client. It could go to remote desktop web access directly. In other words, that would be just another web page. So having a remote desktop gateway it's a good idea to have, but it's not necessary, it's mandatory. So let's go ahead and go back to our PC, and there we go. And then as you see, the applications got delivered, and then here we go, the full application. Now this application, what happened is that so from the client, they made the request. This request, it came and went through the gateway. It came over here. It went to the redirector, and redirector sent the request to the virtual host server. And since we requested a pool, it went to the VM pool, and then the VM pool delivered the desktop. Now that I'm on the desktop, I have medv installed. So I'm going to go ahead and look at the medv application. And now if I click on the Internet Explorer 6, this Internet Explorer 6 is actually going to be looking at this. As soon as I click, the Internet Explorer 6 is coming from this server. So we start another request from the client. It came from the medv server. medv server, it builds up the Internet Explorer 6 session and streams that down to the client. So first the client requested the VM, that it came to the Hyper-V server from a VM pool, and it got delivered to the client. And then the client clicked on the medv IE6, and then request came here to the medv server. medv server, since we have already built a package for the IE6, it grabbed that request and delivered it to the user. So let's just go ahead and see. So it's waiting for authentication. It wanted to do that, and then soon we'll see the application starting. Now, if I go ahead and then I'm going to go ahead and start the Internet Explorer that it comes with Windows 7, and then here if you look at this, this is our Internet Explorer 8, and then we basically and then as soon as this Internet Explorer 6 gets delivered, we will see a Internet Explorer 6 as well. Now obviously the speed that we are showing here is not really representing how efficient these could be. They could be a lot more efficient than a lot quicker than what we see here. But here we have Internet Explorer 6, that it came from the our medv server, as well as Internet Explorer 8, both of them residing side by side on the same machine. And this whole VM is actually got delivered from the backend from here.